Boom. All right. And welcome to week 2 of CIT 225 in the spring semester of winter 2023. I am still Brother Stevic. I'm still your teacher here. Not much has changed. Hello, Camilla. Welcome. So tonight we got a couple of things on the agenda. We're going to talk about your assignments for the week and go through each of them and talk about them real quick. And then I've got a bunch of code I want to show you because from now until about week 8, every Wednesday night meeting will have a code demonstration when I talk about how the code works, how to write it, and the different nuances of it. You might find an accidental answer to one of your exercises in the conversation. Like I said last week, that's not a big deal because all the answers are in the back of the book for the most part. So there's that. And then as we go on, next week, we'll take a deep dive into what the final project is, and I'll explain that in great detail. Because that's the week, if you're gonna do the final project, that's when you should start working on it, is next week. But for right now, we're in week 2, and we're just talking about simple queries. We're talking about simple stuff. We're talking about just getting a good understanding of, hey, Corey, how you doing? Good understanding of how the system works. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. All right, there's the screen. That can go away, and I want to bring up this here and bring over this here. Okay, so this week in the preparation and reading, here's what we're talking about: the mechanics of SQL Server. And we're going to kind of talk about that today. We're going to talk about a SQL clause is, a query clause. We're going to go over select from, clause, group, where, all these. We're going to talk about these. And I'll show you the code for them. You have PowerPoint slides. You've got, for chapter 3, you've got some basics of a relational database model, a bunch of video tutorials about reverse engineering our website. We'll talk about that real quick as well. How to create an entity relationship diagram. I'm going to show you that a couple of times during the course of the class. If you don't watch that this week, you don't lose sleep over it. And you might want to watch this one here on how to reverse. Don't watch this, because this one, then I'm not going to say this often, but this is going to tell you how to reverse engineer a database. We'll talk about that later. Don't worry. Actually, don't worry about these two right now. They're not on the quiz. This is an FYI thing. We will go through it in class. On week 6, if I remember correctly. All right. And we're going to talk about all this fun stuff here tonight. We're not going to talk about that because no one uses that. So a quick sidebar: when we're in these classes, there's a lot of stuff that your course is going to talk about, like the CLI. And I said last week, the CLI is really cool. No one actually uses it. Most people use something called Toad. They use something called SQL Workbench. They use something called, what's the other one they use? Oh gosh, I can't remember the name of it. It's Toad, SQL Workbench, one other. One of my good friends at my day job uses the CLI. He's cool. I won't mess with him. I'm not going to throw shade on him, but I've always found it easier to do the IDE. This isn't really used by anyone. Okay, we'll talk about all this stuff. We're not going to talk about this so much today. We're going to talk about that next week. Today we're just doing select statements. That's all we're talking about. And your exercises are all about select statements. Okay. All right. So that's what this week is all about. So you got your exercises. These are all write select statements. Write a select statement, write a select statement, write a select statement. Fill in the blanks on this select statement. So this week's exercise should be pretty easy. Quiz. You know the drill on that one. Again, let me remind you, some of the questions on the quiz are a little what's what I want? Silly. The quiz was written by the people who made the course, and not like the BYUI people made the course, but like the people at whatever place made the course. There are some questions that I try to get in to delete ahead of times. If you find anything unusual in the quiz questions, let me know. Sam found one that was a trick question that said select is one of the last queries to run, which is correct. We're going to talk about that in a second on how that works. Anyway, so yeah, so if you have any questions on the quiz, just pop me an email. If I can't fix the question, I'll just give you credit for the question. Reverse engineering a website. We talked a little bit about this last week. And again, let me reiterate, this is a very simple assignment. This is nothing to be worried about. This is nothing to panic about. All this is going to a website of your choice that apparently has that backend database and tell me how you think the backend database works. I don't need you to create an ERD. I don't need you to draw anything. I don't need you to do any kind of like incredibly technical design. All I want you to do is talk to me. It says here you should use a spreadsheet to break down or later implement an ERD. I don't want that. All I want you is to tell me how you think it works. Tell me what you think the tables are. Tell me who you think they relate to. Tell me some columns you think are in that table. This is really just an exercise to see. There's two parts to this. One is an exercise to see if you guys can, start visualizing what a database looks like, understanding how the table structure works, what tables might be there, and what you might call them, and how they might talk to each other. And I'll do one here in a second. I'll pull up a website and I'll kind of talk through it. The second part is, and really to me, the first part is important, but this part is important too. The second purpose of this assignment is to not have to use Proctorio in a future quiz. We don't want to do that. So please, it's very important. For those of you with me tonight, the 8 of you with me tonight, those of you watching at home, please make sure that you put your face on the screen so I can see you. Because if we get audited and people don't show their faces, they technically can make us do quiz 6 using Proctorio. So please make sure that you do that, so we don't have to use the Proctorio thing. Okay. Here's the rubric. Okay, I'm not going to get into that. So let me pull. So here's the thing. Don't use the church website. Don't use Family Search. Do not use Amazon. Do not use eBay. Do not use Etsy. Do not use any of these giant monolithic applications that have giant monolithic databases that you're going to try to understand. Just find a small one. So I will pull up like a small company, a small store. I'll pull up my favorite one to talk about. CoolStuffGames.com. And I'm going to go over here. Oops, what did I just do? I hit the wrong button. Okay. I'm going to go over here to Cool Stuff Inc. And I'm going to go here to the collectible Magic the Gathering site. And I'm going to look down here. I'm going to go up and I'm going to say, I want card games. I want to find, okay, so I want single cards here. Okay, so I'm going to go to the weekly sale. Okay, so I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this. Okay, so how does this database work? Okay, so I know that Magic the Gathering has different sets of cards, and I know that the sets have cards have different rarities, and different types of cards. So I think first of all, there's going to be a table for sets, and that the name here, or this will be because Phyrexia all will be one, is the name on the set. So there'll be a table called set, because noted again, I say again, table names in SQL in RMDBS databases are not pluralized, they're singular. Okay, it doesn't have to be. Everyone does it. It'll stand out if you don't. It does make more sense that they're singular. So there'll be a table called set, okay, and there'll be a table called card. And so the twos will talk to each other. So I know that one card can be in many sets, and one set has many cards. So I can't have a direct link to those tables. I need to have a table between them called set cards. That'll be between, so I have 3 tables. I got cards, I got sets, I got cards, and I got set cards. That's between them. I also know there's rarity, and I know cards can have different rarities, so I'll have a different table called rarity, and I will link that to the card table so I can put the rarity of that card in there. So, and see, I got, what else right here? I got a ratings. Okay, I got a ratings. So their cards get ratings. So I'll probably have another table called ranking, and that will link to the card table, so each card can have a rank. And then let's see, we've got that's display stuff. So here, so I might, so if I have a set table, I might also have another. So I'm looking here for the first time. So I've got HeroClix, board games, Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon. So I think not only will I have a set table, but I'm going to have a table called gaming system, because all these are separate gaming systems. So I have like 7 or 8 tables, and then I will have the gaming system linked to the set table, because I doubt that one of the sets will have more than one. The two gaming systems have the same name for the set, so I think we're pretty safe with that. Yeah, and I think that's how it's gonna do. So, and so I'll have a price. I think I'd put the price in the card in the set card table, so the price would be there. I think that would be the place to put that. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much my rough idea on how this database would work. So that's all I want from you guys. I want you to bring up a website and talk out how you think the backend would work. This is why I say don't worry about it, right? Does anyone have questions on what I expect with this? No? And you may ask yourself, why don't I change the instructions here to say this? Right? So we're in week 2, and I'm curious to see how many people actually watch this video. So there are a number of assignments you're going to get, particularly this, and most importantly, the final project, that I give different instruction in the video than it has on paper here. And I don't change them on purpose, because I ask you guys many times to watch the videos. And so this is my way to see who watches the videos and who doesn't. It's sneaky. I know it's sneaky, but I'm sneaky sometimes. I mean, I've changed. If you notice my my announcements for week 1 were read this if you want to pass the class. Normally I'm not that aggressive in my statements, but I figured I'd try that this semester, right? Just for fun, to see if people are reading it. And I can tell you right now, we're in week 2, and I've had a bunch of students ask me questions that were in the videos, and they didn't watch the video. So you guys are the cool kids. You're going to know everything before it happens, and you guys are going to ace this class without a problem, because you're on these calls, and you're on these video calls, and you're watching everything. So are there any questions about how the reverse engineering works? It's pretty simple. So at this point in time, I'm going to, someone have a question? Oh. Hello. I'm assuming your first name is not Elder. That's just left over for missionary days, or maybe you're a missionary. Elder Abunya, is that correct?
Yeah. I'm currently I facilitated BYU pathway for students.
Oh, cool. Oh, awesome. That's cool.
Sorry.
I'm used to it. Yeah.
This is what I use for my students.
One of the things I love about this church is I'm really bad with names. So I just call everyone brother and sister, and I get away with it.
Yeah, my name is Emmanuel.
Yeah, Emmanuel. Yeah, so if I meet someone at church, like people, I'm in the bishopric, and I'm horrible with names. Sometimes I'll blank on a name. I'll just say, brother, how are you today? And they won't know any better. Okay, so what I was going to say is, let me think of something here. I'm going to give you guys a word, and that word is Dagobah. And I'll put it in the chat here. Dagobah. And I'm going to go here into my code here, and I'm going to put it here. So on the quiz next week, I'm going to ask you, what was the word I gave you in the week 2 video? And this is the word. It's Dagobah. The planet where Yoda escaped from after the great Jedi extermination. I feel like playing games with people this semester, so we'll see what happens. I know we put a lot of information into these videos, and I want to make sure that everyone gets it. And there are some people who like are currently working on week 5 stuff just to power through the class, and that's cool. I have no problem with that. But there are some people who try to do these things and they don't ask the questions. So, and the questions are answered here. All right. So if we have no questions about the reverse engineer or anything else for week 2, I'm going to go ahead and jump into how this code works. Everyone go with that? All right. So what we're talking about today is we're talking about how a SQL query executes itself. And like I said last week, the great thing about T-SQL is that it's English. It's not like, you know, for A equals 1 to 64 if blah, blah, blah. It's like weird C#, VB, whatever coding. It's English. Select is the first word that we use. We're asking you to go get something. From is the next word that we use, telling you where to go get it. Like select milk from the fridge. You tell your kid to do that, they're not going to get confused, right? If I try to do that in Fortran, they're not, or anything else, they're just not to figure it out, right? So in select, we say what columns that we want it to select from the table that we're asking it to select from. So here I've got select from customer, and I want to see the columns first name and last name. If we go over here and we go to the customer table, we'll see all sorts of the columns here. So just so you know why the IDE is coolest, you can do this. And if you're like me and horrible at typing, that helps a lot. You can drag and drop the column names. You can drag and drop the table names. Anything over here, you can drag and drop into the code area and it'll do it for you. You can also right click here, go to send to SQL editor and generate a generic insert, update, delete, or create statement for that table. Again, this will, for those of you doing the final project, this will come in very helpful to know. Okay, so if I run this, it gives me the last name in a column, the first name in a column, and it gives me the column name from the table as the name of the results table. So last name and then first name, right? Why do I have this here twice? That doesn't make any sense. Go right here. Go away. We don't need you twice. Okay, now this is where we kind of diverge from the lesson. There are a number of commands that you can use to alter, massage, or reimagine the results of your query. If it, so there's aggregates and there's concatenations, right? So concatenations are when you take text fields and merge them together. There's a couple different kinds. I'm just going to focus on concat tonight, okay? So I have this keyword here, concat. Notice that it's in gray. That means it's a function. Blue is a command, gray is a function. Orange is a it's in quotes, so it's a string. Okay, so I'm going to do select concat last name, comma, in single quotes, because I only use single quotes in SQL, comma, first name, ask, let me get rid of this for a second here. From customer, and I add a new command here, order by last name. So what I want this to do is when it presents the order, I want it to order by the last name. So it's going to run by default from A to Z in the last name. So let me run that. And there you go. So now.
I do have a quick question.
Sure.
Is it always single quotations? Can you use double? And is there a setting to like limit it to one or the other? Or do you just get to choose and go back and forth?
So from what I've ever seen, it's always single quotes in the SQL engines. I
Okay.
think in some of the more advanced engines like SQL Server and Oracle, you can go in and change it. But it's kind of one of those default settings that you don't want to mess with because it can get confusing for anyone who follows you.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah. But just it's always leaving single quote, which does get tricky because if you're trying to do an apostrophe in there, it gets tricky with figuring that out. But yeah, it's always gonna be single quotes. Concat last name, first name from customer. So here we go. All my stuff is here. It's ordered by last name. But look at the column name. The column name is whatever this was, right? So that doesn't help anyone. The customer's not going to understand what that is. Oh, I forgot you could do that. Whoever set the closed captioning on, I need to remember to do that. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Okay, so I do here as customer. So I do this here. I use the as command, and that aliases the results here. So if I run this now, the column is now customer. And from henceforth, you can use that in your query. Okay. Because once you alias something, the query when it's running will always recognize this as customer. Okay. So here we're gonna get a little more complicated. All we're gonna do is add store ID, add another column to it from customer. There we go. Okay. Now we got store ID, we got customer name. I'm going to add in another layer of complexity. I'm going to add in multiple order by columns. So here it's the same thing. I'm selecting the same thing, some from the same table, but my order by is store ID and then last name. So what's going to happen here is that it's going to sort the table by store ID first, and then it's going to sort last name A to Z. So here we've got 1, 1, 2, 1. So it's just ordered by customer, right? So what we're going to do here is now I've got all my ones alphabetically. And if I scroll down, it's like 1,000 of these things. If I scroll down, I get my twos alphabetically as well. Okay. What I can do, if I've got a command here called, I think it's this one. I get them backwards all the time. So I've got by default is, let me make sure I'm going to do this right. Yeah. So by default, it uses ascending. So that's A through Z, right? I can tell it to do reversed and do descending. Okay. So what's going to happen here is everything's going to be the same except store ID is going to be ascending and last name is going to be descending. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but it's going to go Z through A on the results. Okay. So where we are right now in our class level is we're in the party tricks phase of things that we can do that are just fun, right? Everything we're doing here later on will have a greater purpose. And when you're trying to write queries to pull data out to show to people, because one of the tricks about being in a database, as you follow how to design a database, the data doesn't go in a way that would make sense to anyone who looks at it, right? We'd have if we have one row of data returned, that data may come from like 3 or 4 different tables. So the purpose of the select query is to make sure that everybody, when the data comes out and they have it in their hands per se, that it makes sense to them, right? So we're trying to give them their own little personal Excel spreadsheet that has everything in it that they're asking for. So here I'm going to jump down. I'm adding a new clause here. So this is a clause. This is a clause. This is a clause. And clause. Blue are clauses. So I've got select, same stuff as I had before, except I got to put as customer here because I don't want that nonsense of a name coming there. Okay. Same thing from customer, same thing order by store ID and last name, but here I'm adding where last name like D%. So I'm kind of jumping ahead of things here because where is a filter clause. It's saying, what do you want filtered? You want it filtered on. Okay. We'll get to so let me do this one here first. I should have this in different order. So here I've got, actually, let me move this up here because this should be in order. Okay. I was messing with this before we started today, so I need to put this in the right order so it doesn't jump ahead here. Okay, so here everything's the same, select staying the same, customers the same, ID the same. The only difference is I'm saying where last name equals Miller. So I want you to return everywhere where the last name is Miller. And I run that, and I just get the one, there's only one result, right? Everything has its opposite. So if I do that, show me where last name is anything but Miller. Okay. So everything has its opposite here. Same thing. I'm just changing the where clause a little bit. So instead of where last name equals something, I'm saying where last name is in something. Right. So here I say where last name is in, it's either Miller or it's Smith. And I run it. And that's what it gives me. My opposite command is this. Not. So show me where last name is not in this result. Okay. Everyone with me so far? This is not super complex stuff, but it is kind of fun. So the other thing I can do here, which is a week 5 thing. Let me do this right, people. Last name, where from actor, where last name like in Miller Smith. Okay, so what I've done is I've put a subquery into this statement. So I can either have specific values. I need an extra thing here. There we are. Now it'll actually run. Okay, so if I run this, it basically does what that with not in did, but yeah, so you can put a subquery. When you do where in, you can put a subquery in there. Okay, so this is a topic we had into week 5, but this is just kind of a, let's show you, let's take this out and kick the tires and see what it can do. Everyone good? All right.
I just want to ask a question. Can you? I'm trying to understand this part, this subquery here.
Yeah.
It's a bit confusing for me.
Okay, so before I had this question, I had this query here, right? Where last name in, and in the parentheses, I put a number of specific names that I put in there, right? Like whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Within these parentheses, I need to put a subset of data that the where clause is going to compare to the table from, right? That can come from either me manually putting in the values, or it can from me from putting a select query in there Because if I run this on its own, it's going to give me values,
Okay.
right? Oh, well, if there were actually names in either last name or Smith, but they show up as values, right?
All right.
So what I'm doing is instead of my hard coding, for lack of a better term, the values, the end statement here, I'm doing a dynamic query and writing a select query that pulls this in. And the benefit to this is, and we'll talk about this more in week 6, I'm just giving you guys a rough idea of how this stuff works today, is if, let's say you're writing in a query, you've got a database for some kind of retail store, right? And you want to write a query to show you all items in your inventory that match the price of a certain thing. Okay, let's say you're running a bookstore and you want to know every book that matches the price of The Lord of the Rings, right? It's a weird query, but you could do it, right? So let's say you know The Lord of the Rings is $39.99. So you could say where price in $39.99 equals $39.99, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is that price might change. So it might be
Okay.
on sale this week, or it might go up next week. So instead of, if you hard code anything into a query and you have to change, you've got to go back in and manually change it. However, if you put a query in there, it will look up the value and use the most recent value to run the query.
All right.
Does that help?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. It does.
If you don't get it tonight, it's not a big deal. We will go into great detail on this. Tonight
Oh,
is just basically, here's roughly the queries you're going to write this week in the exercise are like level 1 stuff. Like it's going to be these, right?
Okay.
What I'm doing tonight is taking the opportunity to kind of build on this a little faster because we've only got the 14 weeks, right? To give you ideas, and like you won't see these aggregates and these concatenations until week 7, something like that. But we're talking about them tonight. So, and I do this in video form, so you guys, when week 7 comes along, you can pop back to this video and
All
rewatch
right.
this part, right?
Yeah.
So you'll have a rough idea to go, oh wait, I remember using that. That's in week 1. Week 2, let me go back and look at that. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. No, and again, I love questions. Ask questions. We can talk. That's great. Okay. Boom, boom. We're here. Okay, so here. We're still doing the concatenation. Last name's in. Okay, so here. Same thing. Everything's the same, except I have the where last name is like. I have this like, which means I'm going to start putting wildcards in here. So all I want to know is where everything in the custom table where the last name starts with a D. And there you go. And again, the reverse is not like. Okay. Now I'm going to take these guys here real quick. And I'm going to jump them up here before I get to that last one. Okay. So now in the where clause, I can have multiple criteria to search for. Okay. I can have 1, 2, 3, whatever I want to do. So here I have my where clause saying where description, so we're in the film table now. I've jumped into the film table. I'm getting title, I'm getting description from the film table. And I'm saying where the description is like DOCU. Now here, I got this parenthesis here, right? So if I do a letter in a parenthesis, it said, not parenthesis, I'm sorry, a percent sign. If I letter and percent sign, it's showing find anything that starts with D. I don't care what comes after. It makes no difference. I don't care. Just show me everything that starts with a D. With this one, I'm saying, show me anything that has these 4 letters in it. So I want you to go to the description and find any entry that has these 4 letters in it. I don't care what's in front of it. I don't care what's behind it. I just want these 4 letters. Same thing here, where it's these 4 letters. Does that make sense? All right. So when I run this, it's going to show me where description is like this and it's like this, which means both criteria need to be positive for it to return a result. So I'll run this. And here I have documentary cow, documentary cow, documentary cow. Right? These are pretty funny. A fanciful documentary of a mad cow and a womanizer who must find a dentist in Berlin. A lackluster documentary of a madman and a mad cow who must find a feminist in ancient Japan. These are just pursue a dentist in a balloon, build a lumberjack in New Orleans. I would watch some of these movies. I'm not going to lie.
Someone is very creative.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know how they did this. It's kind of crazy. So now here, now I have, remember I said here, where this is where docu and cow. If I change this word to or, okay, it has to meet one of the two criteria. So over here, oh, that's in the way. Get out of the way. Go back up here. Oh, you go up here. All right. Here, when I did this, I got 8 results. So right here on this line, the 25th query I ran, this is the one I ran, I had 8 results returned, right? And that's when I was doing, it had to be like docu and cow. If I run it where it's like docu or cow, I now have 167 results. So now look, there's documentary, and then there's cow. A touching epistle of a madman or mad cow who must defeat a student in Nigeria. Anyway. So Arabia dogma, why not? So this is this and or can be very powerful. And again, there's an opposite. So here we have the same query where description is like docu and description is not like cow. So I want to know where it's like documentary, but the word cow is not in anywhere. And I run that. And I get 93 results. A fanciful documentary of a frisbee and a lumberjack who must chase a monkey in a shark tank.
Mhm.
Sure, why not? Everyone with me?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So now I'm going to take a real quick second and I'm going to talk about how these queries run in the back end. So you'll hear me refer to as SQL, MySQL as an engine. Okay. It's because it is. Because MySQL is always running on your computer. If your computer is on and you've got MySQL running on it, it's always taking up resources. It's always taking up RAM. It's always taking up CPU. So it's always going to be running. Okay. So refer to it as an engine. When you run a query in MySQL or T-SQL or Oracle or a SQL Server, anything, a couple of things happen to it. Because your computer doesn't speak English. It speaks machine code. And I don't know about you, but I can't code in machine code. So a couple of things happens. When you run this, and I say here, and I hit my little lightning bolt, and it runs, the first thing it does, it takes this and converts it into machine code so the engine can understand it. It also reorders how everything runs. So even though the select query is the first statement in the select statement is the first query in the first clause in the query, it is not the first thing that runs. The first thing that runs is the from clause. Okay, so there's a very specific truth that you need to understand about how database engines work. The data is stored on a hard disk. Makes sense, right? That's where the data is. You cannot manipulate, modify, view, alter, or do anything to the data while it is on the disk. The disk is at rest. It cannot be touched, moved, changed, technically even deleted. That's a whole other story on how that works. But if it's on the disk, it can't be touched. So before a query can do anything, even a select query can do anything, it must take the data that is being used and pull it into memory. So it takes it off the disk and pulls it into RAM. This is why it's terribly important that when you create a database, you are very aware of how much space that table takes up. Because at some point in time, you may have to pull that entire table into RAM,
Wow.
right? If your table is 500 gigs and you do select from, if your customer is 500 gigs, you select from customer, that 500 gig table is going to come into RAM. So,
So,
in,
so
hmm?
I'd like to ask the question, does it mean that you have to have a dedicated PC to run MySQL?
So that's a great question. When you are dealing in a production environment with databases that run in a production world, you have a separate server for your database. It's not the one that's at your desk. You're in a server room. You've got racks and racks of stuff. You've got, like, my company, we have racks and our disk drive. I think for the databases, we have somewhere around 5 petabytes of disk space for data.
Wow. Petabytes.
Yeah. So yeah, you run MySQL on your desktop for development purposes and for testing purposes, but if you're in a production world, this is on a server, sitting out in a server room, and no one has access to it. So I'll sidebar real quick. So it's interesting when you think about what makes a business run. The lifeblood of a business is the data. If a company loses its data, the company is gone. Simple, end of story. If someone managed to get into Amazon tonight and delete their databases so they're unrecoverable, that company is gone. Amazon is out of business. A kind of tragic example of that is when 9/11 occurred in the towers. There were a lot of server rooms in those towers, and there were companies that were in there that had other locations, but all their data was stored in that location. And they had no redundancy. So a lot of companies went out of business because of the loss of data. Okay, that's how important data is. So that's why in companies, they have their data sort of offsite. It's in a different building. It's in the cloud, wherever it is, but it's not where anyone can get to it. So that's just that's a sidebar thing. So because it has to exist in RAM to be manipulated or changed or modified or selected, the first query that runs is this from query, right? So it takes all the data from customer and pulls it into RAM. The next one that runs is the where clause, because now it's going to filter the stuff that's there. So it's going to say, okay, everything's here. Now let's go into the last names table and find everything that starts with a D and get rid of everything else. Okay. And then it does. So now in your test, it says, if you get this question in your quiz, it says select is one of the last queries to run, or the ones commands to run in a query. And because it's worded select is one of the last ones to run, it's absolutely correct. Okay. The majority of time, order by does run last because you have the select and then it puts it in the order, right? But, and the reason why, and this is why I take issue with these quizzes sometimes, the reason why it says select is one of the last ones to run, they're implying that sometimes an order by query isn't there.
Brother Stivik?
Yeah.
The question is actually worded, the select is the last one, not one of the last ones.
Oh, is
And
it?
that was why I sent you a message, yeah.
Okay, I got that misunderstood. Okay. Oh, that's because
Yeah.
I've reworded that one. Okay, I gotta go delete that question.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, it should be worded. Actually, I think there, and if I'm not mistaken, I think there's a question that says select is the last one to run, and there's a question also that says select is one of the last ones to run. So there's two questions with the same thing with one different wording. So I need to go. Thank you for pointing that out to me, Sam. I forgot. I didn't realize that's what you're talking about. I got confused. So I'm going to go delete that question. You may never see it. So select is one of the last ones to run. It's not guaranteed to be the last one to run because there may not be an order by. The order by might be using the default key, which doesn't need to order by, and any number of things. So I will fix that question. All right. Any questions on that? Any other questions? Are we doing good? Okay. So we got all this stuff down. So okay, moving back to here. So now back to here. So here I've got the same query I had before. Forget the last name, blah blah. And here instead of having order by store last name, last ID, I have order by 1 and 2. So this is when we're using cardinal values to do our sorts by. This was very popular in the late 70s and early 80s in coding. It's pretty much done away with now. And what you're saying is 1 and 2 refer to the first and second columns in the select query. So this order by 1 and 2 is the exact same thing as saying order by store ID and last name. Why they would do that way, I really don't know. But it's using the cardinal orders of the select query to do your order by statement. Okay. Any questions on that? We might run a little late tonight. It's 10:15 my time. We got about another 15-20 minutes of stuff depending on questions. We good so far? Because we're going to go into a little more advanced territory now. Okay. So these queries here. This is where the fun starts. These are aggregate functions. Okay, aggregate function, aggregate function, aggregate function. An aggregate function is when you take a column that has numeric values and you combine them into one value. Okay, in various ways. We're going to go through a couple of them. The most important thing to remember about an aggregate column is that if you're using an aggregate in the select statement, you must have a group by statement. If you see like this, you must have that, okay? Because an aggregate is going to try to compact one column of numbers into one sum, right? If you don't give it a column by which to base that from, it's not going to work. So let me show you what I mean. So here I have select rating, and then I have count, right? And I have group by rating. So what this is going, so let me just do a select. Let me do a select star from field real quick, right? Okay. When I run select star from film, you'll see I have the name, blah blah, and then over here I have the rating. And you'll see I have G, NG, NC17, CG, PG13, blah, 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 right? Right? Yada, yada, yada. Got all that there. So what this command is asking you to do is find the rating, count how many of them are, and group that by rating. So if I just did select count from film, it's going to return for me one value, and it's going to be the number of rows. There are 1,000 rows in that table. Okay, but there's no. It just gives me a count. Here I'm saying, show me the film table using the rating column, how many of each rating there are. By using the group by, that's how I'm telling you to do that, right? So if I do this, I know that there are 178 G films, 194 PG films, so on and so forth. And I ordered by rating just because. So again, this tells the select query how to aggregate what's going on here. How to aggregate this. Aggregate this based on the rating table. If I didn't do this, if I didn't have that there, the group by statement, that's what happens. And it happens that way because PG is the first rating in the column in the table.
I have a question
Sure.
about the order by rating. Can you
What's that?
Tell me more. I have a question about the order by rating.
Uh-huh.
Why do we have that there? If you're already selecting from rating.
Okay, so here
And it's
I'm selecting
grouped by rating.
I'm selecting the column rating. I'm
Okay.
grouping it by rating, but these are 3 different commands. This is telling me what to look at.
Okay.
This is telling me how to aggregate it, and this is telling me what order to put it in.
Okay.
Mhm.
The order. Okay.
Yep.
I get it now.
Yep. You're asking some really good questions tonight, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So everyone with me on this? Okay. So here, I'm going to take this in a different direction. I have this, it's the same basic query, rating, film, or group by rating, but I'm changing the aggregate. I'm changing it to the aggregate of the length. So what's going to happen with this is it's going to aggregate it based on rating. Here in this one, it returned how many of each rating existed. Here, it's going to take the length of everything in that rating and take the average of it and present that. So the average length of a G-rated movie is 111 minutes. The average rated PG movie is 112. R-rated movies are the second longest at 118, PG-13, 120 minutes, and so on. So again, we have our aggregate functions. We can break them down based on a column in the table. We have to, actually. If we don't, it doesn't work. And they can order by. Everyone's still with me?
Yeah.
All right. I'm not going to do this one. I'm going to leave this one for another day. I'm not going to talk about inner joints tonight because that's a week 5 thing and you don't need to know it for tonight. And I don't want to keep going on that front. I just want to talk about this now and then taking 5. So last aggregate I have here. I have max and min. So everything's the same select rating from films, group by rating, order by rating. But here I have a max for the replacement cost and a min for the replacement cost. So what this is going to do, it's going to show me every rating from the films table and what the maximum replacement cost of the movie is and the minimum replacement cost of the movie is. Okay, so G-rated movies average, the maximum replacement cost would be $29.99 and the minimum, they're all the same. So, but again, so count, average, max, and min are 4 of about 30 aggregate functions that you can use. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think this is where we're going to end it for tonight because I think that this is a good amount of information for you guys. I usually talk about the inner joints, but I'm going to save that. I like inner joints are fun. I have a whole diagram and a whole monologue that goes with inner joints. That's very cool. You're not going to want to miss it. But this will absolutely get you through actually the first 2 weeks of your work. Well, we have actually, that's not correct. This, what I talked about tonight will actually be the basis for like the next 12 weeks of your assignments. But this will be all you need to know for the first 2 weeks of your assignments. So do you have any questions on anything we talked about tonight? Any questions on the reverse engineering? Any questions on the code we talked about? Any questions on anything?
Yeah, for the reverse engineering, do you just
Yeah.
want a video and that's it, or do we have to write anything? And
So I guess you came in late before I talked about it. So all I want is for you to make a video, and this is a, so because this is a we don't want to use Proctorio thing. We need you on camera picking a database, picking a website, and just talking to me on how you think the database would work on the back end.
oh, okay,
When I publish this tonight for tomorrow, you might want to pop in and look at the earlier thing when I talk about that. Also, there's a secret word that's on quiz 3 that will get you 5 points that you want to know. So, but yeah, I just gave a basic demo on how to do it. It's super simple. I don't need any diagrams. I don't need any spreadsheets. I don't need anything. I just need you telling me how the database, how you think the database works on the back end.
Okay, cool,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, no problem. The reason, one of the reasons I didn't talk about this before, but one of the reasons why is because for me personally, databases, and this is gonna sound where I sound a little really weird. A database is like an art form. When you see an ERD and it's in its completeness and you have all the connections, it's like a flowing art form. You see data goes from here and it goes down to here, and you kind of see how the data flows across it. And it's really super cool to see that. But all of that, all art starts in your head. You imagine what it's going to look like. You think about how it's going to be. So that's what this exercise for me is. This is you kind of visualizing how a database will run. And then starting in week 3, when we talk final projects and I start talking to you about how to build database and demoing building databases, the week 2 exercise of thinking about it is going to help you immensely, because the final project is you designing a database from scratch on a topic that you want. And you have to, imagine how the thing's going to be and then put it down on paper. So yeah. Cool. Thank you for the question, Camilla. And thank you for coming tonight. Any other questions?
I sent you a mail about I'm having challenge with the installing of the MySQL.
Yeah, so there are about 4 of you that are having trouble with the installation of MySQL. Everyone seems to be having the same issue where it's asking for your login and password on the MySQL routing information. Reach out to the TA,
Okay.
Dennis, and he's been helping people with that. Because I think he understands where there is. I've never seen that error before, and I can't install MySQL on my computer right now, so I can't walk through the process. But he's been helping people with it. I think it requires a complete and total uninstall of MySQL, and there's a link I've been sending people to how to go into the to the Windows files and remove every mention of the MySQL database.
Okay, I think I'm gonna need that link.
Yeah. Reach out to Dennis.
I've uninstalled everything, and
Yeah.
I think I still have, and reinstall. I think I still have that same issue.
Yeah, reach out to Dennis. He put an announcement there. Reach out to Dennis, and he will help you out. There is also a I don't know if you'll know this or not, but there's also a student help desk that you can reach out to. But I would check Dennis first, because the student help desk, depending on who you get, like any help desk, is depending on the help you're going to get.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get this video up online. Put it to my YouTube channel, like and subscribe. I said as a joke because it's just weird. It's just the easiest place for me to put these. When you get to the YouTube channel, I actually have my last 5 years of classes there. So if you're bored one day and need to sleep, pop into week 5 over there and see what was going on at that time if you need additional explanation. But I will also take the code that I've been using tonight and put that in the announcement for this, so you can play with this code. The key to understanding all this is just playing with it, just writing queries and see what happens and see if they work and what the results come. It's just really like a giant Lego set. Just play with it and see how it works.
All right.
All right. Anything else?
All
right, my
have a
friends.
question, but that's not related to what you explained tonight.
Sure. Hit it.
As I just noticed, I took the quiz 2 this morning, but I just noticed that the grade changed. That you've added, I don't know.
I
5
added a question.
points.
I added a
Okay.
question.
But I can't
Yeah.
retake it. So
Yeah, I'll
I
fix
don't
it.
know.
I'll fix it.
All right,
I did.
perfect.
I tried to get to it before anyone took it.
Oh, sorry.
But I think like no, it's okay. Don't ever apologize for being fast. Yeah, it was just basically forcing people to watch the video I put in the announcement what shirt I was wearing.
Yep, right.
But yeah, so as I've said in these videos on the Tuesday night class that I'm doing, I'm going to put something that's going to be in the quiz the next week.
Okay.
Just to encourage people to watch these videos and to get the information that's there. Or at least just skip through to find where the point of the word I give is. But yeah, I'll fix that. Did anyone else take the quiz before today?
No.
No? Okay. The answer, by the way, if you're taking the quiz, the answer is purple. Oh, no. I asked how long the video was, which was 8 minutes and 57 seconds. Yeah, so if you're here, you don't need to look at that. I give you 2 answers for 2 quizzes for 2 weeks. That's pretty cool. All right. We're at time, and I
Thank you.
respect your guys' time. If there's nothing else, let's end it here. Please email me, contact me, however, and I will help you out. And also remember, you got a TA who will help you out with things. Have a great night, everybody. See you next week.
Okay, have a good one.